So,
Good afternoon. Good evening. I'm Afia Diane Dawson, and this is Kariem Ahmed. And today is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. And this is one of a series of interviews being done with historian Kariem Ahmed, student of history and just pretty knowledgeable on the history of several religions, especially the Judaic religions, the Abrahamic religions. So today we're talking about some of the early history of Judaism and also early Christianity in Ethiopia. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask Kariem Ahmed is about, he was telling me that Jews are called Jews because of their connection with the tribe of Judah. Would you go on to explain more about that?
Well, back during the kingdom of Israel under Solomon, after the death of Solomon, there was a split within the kingdom between the north and the south due to overtaxation of the whoever the heir of Solomon was to inherit the throne. He overtaxed the population, and one half of the country split away from the other half. The southern region split away and turned into Judea, and the northern half remained Israel until they were conquered and carried away into another kingdom. And so the people who were carried away were regarded as the lost tribes of Israel, and the people who stayed in the south and remained in Judea became known as the Jews.
I see. And can you also explain what we were talking about with Ethiopia and the history of Christianity and Judaism in Ethiopia?
Well, it's believed that the Ethiopians hold the Ark of the Covenant, and that they trace themselves through Solomon, through King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and their descendant, which is Menelik, the child that they had. And they are connected into the Judaic people through Menelik, the child Menelik, their king.
Mm-hmm.
So the Falashas, what they call a Beta Israel, are considered to be a Judaic offshoot, and then later a Christian, one of the earliest Christian churches. So there were, I believe, 7 churches of Asia and 2 churches or 3 churches of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So there was the Egyptian or the Coptic Egyptian church, the Ethiopian church or the Ethiopian Orthodox church, and the Tunisian church, which was established by Saint Augustine, the black saint who headed up.
Okay.
Saint Augustine.
The Tunisian church?
Tunisian, the land of Tunisia,
Okay.
which is a part of the Moorish or Berber ethnic group, and what they would call like a Moorish, I guess what you would call Moorish nationality, which is Tunisia, Morocco, and I forget the other country. It'll come back to me. But that whole region is really the old Carthaginian Empire under Hannibal, which is the old Phoenician Empire, which are genetically and ethnically the Canaanites of the land that we now call Palestine or Israel. So the Phoenicians were a seafaring people, and they colonized a portion of North Africa, which later became known as Carthage. And they went to war with Rome, and Rome eventually beat them. And later that becomes a part of the Moorish Empire, or Morocco and the Moorish Empire, which eventually invades Spain southern Europe, Spain into southern France and parts of Portugal.
And what was the ethnicity of the Moors?
Black African and Arab Berber.
Okay.
So the earliest Muslims, known as the Umayyads, were the original Muslims from the tribe, the Quraysh tribe, which is the tribe that Muhammad comes from. And that was a jet black Arab tribe. They were Arab with wavy hair,
Okay.
but jet black skin.
So Muhammad, who started Islam, was a black man.
Muhammad ibn Abdullah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I was not aware of that. And since Muslims are forbidden to do pictures of Muhammad ibn Abdullah, I never knew what he looked like.
Yeah, well, the Persians made a bunch of pictures, and even
Okay.
when they blotted out his face, his hands were white. So they certainly seem to suggest that he was white, but the historical record would suggest that he was black. He was born into an all-black tribe of people, and they were black supremacists. So they were highly ethnocentric. They did not accept lighter-skinned people among them. They really didn't accept anybody. All the Muslims were considered black up until the end of the Umayyad dynasty. And the second dynasty of Islam, which is the Abbasid dynasty, came in, and that became more of a mixed breed dynasty. Essentially, the Muslim population, the original population, got light because the Muslims would enslave Caucasian people, Persians and Romans, and they would bring their women into concubinage and make a bunch of babies. And if you kept a woman as a concubine, she did not have the same rights as a wife. So it was easier, or I guess more convenient, for the black Muslim men to marry or subjugate Caucasian women and make children without their wives having any real say, because those women were not married to those men.
Okay.
They would have been slaves to the men.
Okay.
That group, the Umayyads, when they were overthrown by the Abbasids, the second Islamic dynasty, they migrated into the Moroccan region of Africa, and they became part of the original Moorish people.
Okay.
According to Dr. Ivan van Sertima, he says that, I believe he said 8 of the 10 Moorish tribes were of Mandingo extraction.
Okay. And Mandingo tribe is from what part of Africa?
That being Mali, Senegal region. In other words, very much black African, West African extraction. And maybe about 2 of the tribes, he said, were Arab tribe, were Arab extraction, most likely Umayyad, and maybe a mixture of something else.
Okay. Okay. Can you tell us?
Now, I'm not sure. He might have said 8 out of 10 or 10 out of 12, but it was roughly about 85% African, according to Ivan van Sertima.
Okay.
Golden age of the Moors.
And I recall also asking you what percentage of the enslaved Africans who were brought to the Americas were Muslim.
And that was approximately 1 out of every 3, about 30%.
About 30%, about 1/3 of the Africans brought to the Americas
Were Muslim.
were Muslim. Also, the other question, I'm glad I recalled, was about who was on the ship with Columbus, and can you tell us a bit more about Africans in North America before Columbus?
Well, you had a number of waves of indigenous people in North America. So the earliest indigenous type was the Aborigine type, similar to the phenotype of the Aboriginals in Australia.
Okay.
And that was considered the first. That was considered the first type within the Americas, and that may have been as far back as 100 to 50,000 years ago. That group migrated into the Americas, most likely through the Bering Straits.
You're saying between 100,000 and 50,000
Well,
years ago?
between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago,
Okay.
that group migrated into the Americas.
So that's way, way, way
That's
before
the-
Columbus.
That's the earliest ethnic group, the earliest phenotype found in the Americas.
Okay. So black people were here.
Dark skin, but remember the Aborigine type was a dark skin with a wavy
Right.
kind of hair.
Yes.
That same Aboriginal type went to India
Mm-hmm.
and became the Dravidian, and that same type went into Australia. So that type was the first type to migrate out of
Wow.
Africa. And the first migration period was approximately 100,000 years ago out of Africa. Somewhere
those
between
were the first
170,000. Yes,
Wow.
leaving out of Africa.
How much we've never been taught.
Remember, Africa has the largest genetic diversity on the planet. So there are more physical types in Africa than the entire planet combined.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's only stereotypical for us to believe that Africans only look one way,
Right.
which is usually what they call a Congolese Negro, which is the wide nose, big lips, kinky hair, dark skin. That's one type of many. That happens to be a more dominant genetic type. So generally when that type mixes with others, those traits come out more than the other traits, but the other traits are still present.
Right.
So some of the oldest people are called the San people or the
Right.
Khoikhoi,
Yes. in
which
South
are
Africa.
brown skinned
Yes.
people with peppercorn hair and
Yes.
Asiatic features.
Yes.
And they're probably the original Asian, the progenitors to the Asian phenotype.
Yes. When I went to South Africa, I met them, and they're a short people, and it's quite interesting. When I went to South Africa to see, I saw many of the phenotypes, a large variety of African people,
Right.
not simply what I saw when I went to West Africa, which is
Exactly.
more what you say,
The
the
Congolese Negro.
Congolese.
Congolese Negro is what
Okay, the Congolese Negro, but in South Africa, I saw many types
Right.
of African people,
and that's an older.
varied looks, heights,
Right.
colors,
Right.
and they were all African people and not mixed with European.
Right.
That was their natural, historical look from way back when.
And they're genetically older.
Yes, yes, yes. I think the Sun are said to be some of the oldest.
Yeah, the San, the Khoikhoi.
Yeah, yeah, and they're like a light brown.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that they are some of the
Yeah.
oldest types and they're the progenitors of the Oriental phenotype.
Okay.
So if you look at their features, they look
Mhm.
Asian,
Yes.
but dark skinned.
Yes.
So you can see over thousands of years as they migrated throughout the planet and their skin got lighter,
Mm-hmm.
that they maintained the features but with a lighter skin.
Yes. It's amazing. You really get to see how we definitely are the original people and how all life came from us
Mm-hmm.
and how life came out of Africa. And it was not just one phenotype, as you say. It was not simply the Congolese look, the broad nose and the wide lips
Mm-hmm.
and the very dark skin is not the only African. And I've often had trouble because I don't meet those, that I don't have those features.
Mm-hmm.
And so people always question me as to what is my genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to Africa, I got a true understanding because I saw many people of different facial features and different body sizes and shapes,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't all look the same.
Mm-hmm. The second group going into the Americas were the Bantu people, and they began coming into the Americas about 30,000 years ago. And so you may find a lot of the Native American people have Bantu stock
Okay.
because the Bantu have been here for so long.
Mm-hmm.
One of the latest or later groups to go in were the Malians, of the Empire of Mali.
Okay, but back up 1 minute. Where the Bantu people, what part of Africa are they in?
Bantu is South Central Africa.
Okay,
They're also a part of South Africa.
okay,
So they are oftentimes mixed with the Congolese.
yes, okay,
And they are also down into Southwest Africa,
okay.
Angola and Zimbabwe
Mm-hmm,
and Equatorial Guinea.
okay,
And then back to the Malian Empire, the brother of Mansa Musa,
mm-hmm,
known as Abubakari,
mm-hmm,
was the original king of the empire. And he had a theory that the earth,
And what was the name of the empire?
the Malian Empire,
Okay,
the Empire of Mali.
mm-hmm,
And his theory was that the earth was shaped like a gourd.
mm-hmm,
And he sent out an expedition to go circumnavigate the globe.
mm-hmm,
And they would build ships, they built canoes. Their ships weren't ships in the European sense.
mm-hmm,
They were canoes because Africa had these very big trees. I'm not sure if it was the baobab tree or not, but what they would do is they would cut a tree down and they would carve it out
mm-hmm,
into one large canoe.
mm-hmm,
And they would sail the canoe and they had oarsmen.
mm-hmm.
And they would navigate the waterways that way. There's a current that goes from West Africa into Brazil. And there's a current that goes from North America back over to West.
Right,
So they would catch the current
yes, I've heard about that.
and they could literally, you almost don't need to sail because the current will carry you into South and Central America. And so the first expedition went out, I believe it was 20 ships, and only one ship came back. And the ship that came back explained to the king about the current and how the current swept them away, and the other ships were lost and they don't know what happened.
Okay,
The king of Mali, Abubakari, decided that he would go on the expedition himself, that he would lead his own expedition.
can you tell us what year that was?
I believe that was in 13 or 1200s.
Okay,
I forget the exact year.
okay,
He leads his own expedition and he turns the throne over to Mansa Musa, his younger brother. He never returned.
okay,
He disappeared, and that's how Mansa Musa ascended the throne
okay.
and became the famous Mansa Musa,
Yes,
who is still regarded as the wealthiest man in all of
yes.
history.
They say when he traveled, the price of gold went down everywhere he went.
Depressed the entire economy everywhere he went. Not inflation, but deflation, because he gave away so much gold.
Yes.
So everybody had some gold to trade. So gold was practically worthless
Yes.
after he left.
He was so generous.
But he also captured the attention of the European aristocracy. So if you look at some of the old maps, the picture of Mali is a picture of Mansa Musa sitting on a throne with a gold nugget in his hand. And that's how Europeans came to realize that West Africa was filled with gold.
Oh, okay.
And that began some of the earliest expeditions into the area looking for gold.
Yes, yes. And I remember that the original name for the land that's now called Ghana was the Gold Coast.
Right.
Yes, because it had so much gold.
So Mali was one of the latest African empires or cultures to go into the Americas, and it's believed that those original Malians merged with the native populations who were in the Caribbean islands and also in Central and South America. And they found gold spear tips, Malian spear tips in the Americas, and they found Malian gold coins in the Americas. And also when Columbus did reach America, there were masjids in Cuba. I believe Cuba was the first place he landed, and then Hispaniola. And he described seeing masjids and hearing the Adhan, the call to prayer. And some of his navigators who were Moors and spoke Arabic were able to communicate with the native population in Arabic.
So you're saying that there were Africans, black Africans, on the boat with Columbus?
Yes,
Okay.
coming out of the old Moorish Empire of Andalusia, which is now Spain and Portugal.
Okay. And now Columbus, who originally thought the earth was flat, but now those navigating with him, were they under that impression too?
I don't know that Columbus thought that the earth was flat, but it was widely believed by Europeans that the earth was flat.
Okay.
Columbus was genetically a Jew, a dark-skinned Jew, most likely a black European or a mulatto. He was already connected to sailors throughout West Africa, and he would go into Cape Verdoc. Yeah, he would go into Cape Verdoc and
What we call Cape Verde?
Cape Verde
Okay.
and get maps. He had
Uh-huh.
ancient maps of the Americas,
Okay.
and he would speak to the African sailors who had been sailing between Africa and America for at least 200 or 300 years.
Are you saying
before
that
Columbus.
Africans were sailing before Columbus?
Yes, I said that in the Empire of Mali, the king of Mali abdicated the throne and gave it to his brother Mansa Musa, king of Bubakari, gave the throne to his brother Mansa Musa, and sailed to the Americas.
I'm in shock because this is not what we were taught in school.
We don't know if he made it to the Americas or not, but we see the evidence that either the first expedition made it or his expedition made it. A second expedition, I believe, was 200 ships, which was
Wow.
about 10 times the size of the first expedition.
Okay. So you're
But they
saying
never returned.
okay. Mansa Musa's brother took 200 ships. Wow. So even if they never returned, they must have landed somewhere.
The evidence would suggest that some group of Muslims who were capable of building made it to the Americas because they found black Muslims in the Americas
Okay.
who spoke the language that the international language of trade, which was Arabic at the time,
Okay.
and appeared to be Muslim. They had masjids, made prayer, and spoke in Arabic, and was able to communicate with Columbus's party through the language of Arabic.
Okay.
So it's believed that those Africans merged into the Tiano populations of the Caribbean and into other indigenous
okay.
populations in
Yes.
Central and South America.
The Taino Indians.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you look at some of the old pictures of the Indians, you'll see them with turbans on their head.
Yes.
Well, that was something that came from the East,
Right.
not the West. They have turbans and then they will put the feathers in to the turban.
Yes.
So you will see attributes that they're carrying that appear to come from West Africa.
Okay. Wow. Wow. And I believe you also told me that Columbus said that he saw synagogues when he came.
He also mentioned synagogues. He made a reference to synagogues, but it was not as clear when he mentioned the synagogues as the masjids. He said he clearly saw masjids, Muslims, and heard the call to prayer, and they were speaking Arabic. And he alluded that there may have also been synagogues and people who spoke in Hebrew. So remember, there's an entire global empire that exists before Columbus breaks out of Europe. So when the Moors go and conquer Spain, the occupants of Spain are both Christian European and Sephardic Jew.
Okay.
And the Jews, the Sephardic Jews, set up an entire trading empire throughout the world. They were probably already aware of the existence of the Americas
Okay.
through their connections in Morocco into West Africa and Columbus is a Sephardic Jew.
Okay.
A dark-skinned Sephardic Jew, most likely a mulatto.
Okay. So he was not white skinned.
He was not fully white.
Okay.
He may have been a very light-skinned man, but he was genetically Jewish and would have been connected to the darker-skinned people of Spain, the people who were running Spain for 700 years.
And that would be the Moors.
The Moors.
Now, when you say he was genetically a Jew, what is a genetic Jew?
In other words, he's connected to the ethnic group that consider themselves Jewish, but they're Sephardic.
Okay. And
Not
what is
Ashkenaz.
Sephardic?
That's the Jewish people who lived in Spain, as opposed to the Jewish people who live in Poland and Germany and Russia, which are the Ashkenazi Jews and the I'm trying to remember the name of the empire. It'll come back to me.
Okay, so now the Ashkenazi Jew, I believe you were telling me that those are what we know as the European Jew,
Yeah.
who is currently,
Khazarian is the other word I was looking
okay, Caesarian?
for. Khazarian.
Khazarian, C-Z-A-R.
No, K. Khazarian.
Oh, okay.
From the Khazarian Empire, which was on the borderlands of Turkey, and they are genetically related to the Mongolians. They're like a mixture of Turks and Mongolians and
Wow.
Russian Europeans. So they're like a mixed breed stock, and they were polytheists, and they were trapped between the Christian world and the Muslim world when the Muslims and Christians were warring with each other.
Right, yes.
And they were being pressured to take a side in the conflict, and the king of Khazaria called the Muslim scholars, the Jewish scholars, and the Christian scholars. And the Jewish scholars convinced them that Judaism was older than the other two religions, and so he converted to Judaism and eventually converted the entire kingdom
Now,
to Judaism.
where is Khazaria today?
Modern day, like the Ukraine, Russia area.
Okay. And we see that people from that area also are not particularly white skinned.
No, they're really a mixture of Mongolian and Turk and Russian. They're
Yes.
a mixed breed population. So that's why you see many Jews are not really European in the classic European sense. They're
Right.
really Khazarians who migrate into Eastern Europe and then into Western Europe.
Okay. And I know I have met some Russians who I thought were Mexican. And I was shocked when they did not speak Spanish, because I'm talking Spanish to them and they're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Some Russians look like they're Asians.
Yeah. And I'm like, aren't you Mexican? No. Well, don't you speak Spanish? No. Like, where are you from?
It's a mixed breed.
Russia. What?
Mixed breed population.
Yeah. But the Russians, the people who we see as who they tell us are Russian, are white-skinned,
That's the ruling class
Yeah.
of Russia, and they migrate into Russia, and they're part of the old Roman Empire.
Okay.
So Russia sees themselves as the extension of the Roman Empire.
Okay. Well, Kariem, this has been a very, very enlightening conversation. As always, I thank you. I don't know if we even answered the questions that we started out with, but this was wonderful. And I thank you for a really enlightening conversation. I'm not sure that we even got to answer the questions that we started out with, but this conversation has been so full of new knowledge, at least for me. I've learned a lot, and you've given me a lot to ponder, as happens whenever I have a conversation with you. It is amazing to me how much knowledge you have on the history of religions and of peoples. And I don't know where we'd be without students of history, without historians, without people who store up knowledge as the griots did of old. And that's part of our African tradition, is to carry knowledge in our head and to share it with our people, to verbally share that knowledge with our people so that we can continue the legacy and know who we are. They say a people without wisdom are dead. That if you don't know who you are lost. If we don't know our own history, we're lost. And if we don't have an understanding that we have a history that began way before we were kidnapped and brought here. So I thank you for an enlightening time, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you. And happy birthday.
Thank you.